Well, welcome to the fourth year of the Poetry of Healing show. And as you can see, I have Bishop Keith Clark, my pastor, my friend, my spiritual leader here with us, as I have every year that I've begun a season. So, welcome, Bishop Clark.
Hey, how are you, Dr. Van?
I am great, and you know you're my lucky charm. You know that. So, as we begin this fourth season with just joy and so much that has happened over the years, today we're going to talk about forgiveness and just explore it in a different way. We did it the first season. I don't know if you remember. That's how
Mhm.
we started. But I think it's perfect because we're in the season of Thanksgiving. We're going to be entering the season of peace. And
Mhm.
so forgiveness is, we can't talk enough about it. But before
Mhm.
we begin, I'm going to ask you and our viewers just to kind of center. And I usually do a variety of things, but today it's the first episode of the fourth season. I'm going to return to heart math. And so that is a practice where we use our heart to breathe, and it helps us to be in the present moment. Because right now, viewers, there's nowhere else you need to be, I'm hoping, and that you can be present with us. So I invite you to lower your gaze or close your eyes, and you're going to breathe deeply and slowly through your nose, and then you're going to exhale through your mouth. Okay. And I'll just help you, guide you along the way. So when you take the next breath in, you're going to imagine that your heart in your left chest is breathing. So it's going to expand when you breathe in. And then when you breathe out, it's going to contract. You're going to breathe out through your mouth. Okay. Just a couple more breaths. Breathe in through your nose and have that beautiful heart of yours expand. Hold it and then breathe out. And your heart is getting smaller. And one more time, breathe in through your nose and your heart expands. And this time, think about someone or something that you need to forgive. Okay. And then just blow out and surround that person, place, or thing with light. Okay.
Mhm.
So if you're just joining us, viewers, this is the first episode of the fourth season of the Poetry of Healing. And I just thank you for the support over the years. And I have as my guest, as I've had for every season opener, my bishop, pastor, Bishop Keith L. Clark. So again, welcome, Bishop. And we're just going to drop into the conversation about forgiveness or the um, the practice of forgiving others. And we can start out by saying why do we need to talk about forgiveness? What prompts this need to forgive others? What do you say,
Well,
Bishop?
well, first of all,
Mhm.
Dr. Van, thank you so much for allowing me to come on and to be a part of what you are doing, not only by way of this podcast, but just in your everyday life, always trying to enlighten and enrich the lives of others. So I'm grateful to God to be a part of this and honored to be your pastor.
Mhm.
Uh, when we talk about this issue of forgiveness and speaking as a man of faith, to me, when I study the life of Christ, there is no other time in the life of any individual that they're being more Christ-like than the time when they're forgiving.
Mhm.
Nothing else shows a Christ-like attitude. Nothing shows, and we know Christ is love. Nothing shows love Nothing shows compassion and concern like forgiveness. So to me, I think forgiveness is a part of the core of who we are as human beings. Now, it's oftentimes not exercised, but it definitely is there. And I think when we do it, we really show love.
Oh, you just summed that up so beautifully. It's part of being human. And
Yeah.
so as human, we have human relationships
Mhm.
and we have traumas. We have big traumas, we have little traumas, and
Mhm.
those are the things that cause us to um, really begs us to forgive. So today we're not going to talk about the big traumas. We're only together less than an hour, so we're not going to go there. But there are little traumas that
Mhm.
happen in our lives where people betray us
Mhm.
or disappoint us in some way. And so I'm
Mhm.
thinking about a few, like you're always too busy to talk to me. Okay, so it may
Mhm.
be a spouse saying it, or a
Mhm.
child saying that to you, or you saying it to someone else and feeling that way. Um,
Mhm.
if you share something with someone and they say, "Oh, I don't believe you," that's painful, right?
Mhm.
Because you've shared, you've made yourself vulnerable, and this
Mhm.
person is saying, I don't believe you. And someone lied to you. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, you were somewhere, you thought they were going to be somewhere on Saturday night and they were somewhere else. So you
Mhm.
thought they were going to be at work and they were somewhere else. So these little traumas are the ones that make us have to uh, think about and work on
Mhm.
being forgiving. So, um, Bishop, when we talk about forgiveness, words that come to my mind also are betrayal,
Mhm.
wrongdoing.
Mhm.
Bless you, Bishop,
Thank
um,
you.
and things like that. So let's start with um, why. What happens if we don't forgive? What happens to us?
That's a great question because many people have chosen not to forgive because they don't understand who forgiveness really benefits.
Mhm.
Forgiveness is always for the person who's been offended, not the offender. We have a tendency to feel that way because we think that if I forgive them, then I'm letting them off. Or if I forgive them, there's no retribution. If I forgive them, there's no uh, vindication, right? And the truth of the matter is, forgiveness is not for them, it's for me, it's for you. And the reason why is because forgiveness at its core is to say that I'm not going to retaliate. I'm not going to avenge. I am not going to do to you what you've done to me. I'm letting that go. And when we do that, then we free ourselves. You really can't live productive and you're walking around trying to avenge or hoping somebody gets what they got coming to them.
Mhm.
That's not a healthy way to live. It consumes your time. And here's the crazy thing about it. Well, I shouldn't say crazy, but here's the real challenging, foolish thing about it. Let me say it that way.
Mhm.
Is oftentimes the forgiveness that we don't allow to happen when a person has offended us, oftentimes that person who's offended is going on with their lives. And yet we're held hostage to a feeling because we won't exercise a choice. Now, that's important to hear that. Forgiveness is holding on, unforgiveness allows you to hold on to a feeling because you won't exercise a choice, because forgiveness is a choice.
Mhm. Bishop, you're preaching.
I
You preaching before.
better pause before I go on.
No, I love it because you really are. I love the fact that you emphasize that forgiveness is a choice. It's an active choice that we have to make if we don't want to be bitter, be criticizing others, and be trapped in resentment and bitterness and anger and even hating. So last Sunday, your sermon was about forgiveness. And so would you share with us the definition of forgiveness that you shared with the congregation?
I would love to. Giving you the context of the message, we were talking about, there's a letter that the Apostle Paul writes to a fellow by the name of Philemon. And Philemon has been portrayed. I like that you use that word, because oftentimes when somebody has hurt us and they're in need and we have to forgive, it's almost as if we're canceling a debt, right? We are saying, hey, what you did is wrong, but I'm not going to hold on to that. So Paul is writing to a fellow by the name of Philemon, who's been portrayed by a guy by the name of Onesimus. Well, Onesimus now comes to faith in Christ, and Paul instructs Onesimus to go back and get things right with Philemon. Well, in the process of Onesimus going back to do that, Paul writes a letter encouraging Philemon to forgive. And we said that forgiveness is refusing not to retaliate or seek revenge to someone who has done you wrong. It is choosing that I'm not going to retaliate. I'm not going to seek revenge to someone who's done me wrong. And I'm not going to do that by my words or by my deeds. What was interesting about that, and I think it's important to say this, I feel led to actually, Dr. Van, is that forgiveness is not forgetting. And oftentimes people don't think they have forgiven because the memory still resonates with them. Listen, memory is a part of the human experience. It's a part of our brain's function to remember. It's not the memory that's bad, it's the event or the act that was bad. When I learn to forgive, when I choose to not retaliate, when the feeling emerges, it doesn't mean I haven't forgiven, but it shows that I've forgiven, because now this feeling does not control me, because I could say to that feeling, you're right, but I chose to forgive.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and you're bringing up a really excellent, all your points are right on, but this one is that how can I say, the trauma or the need to forgive, or whatever situation caused this need to forgive, is with you forever, because the person's name may be said. You have a memory, like you said, that comes to you, and you get feeling again. You may go someplace where you both have been, and the memory comes back. So the relationship, even though you may cut it off with this person who hurt you, you're still connected, because it's a human experience, and all these things can be triggers, can be reminders. And let's I love this. So when someone is in an unforgiving state, or in an unforgiving state, what kind of, it's not only the mind that's affected, right, Bishop? The body gets affected. The pain in your heart, right? The emptiness. Sometimes, I think about, I'm a little, I want to say I'm a young adult in forgiveness. I'm not mature adult, but I'm a young adult in forgiveness, right? And every time I think about something
Hmm.
um, that really hurts. My heart actually hurts. I can feel my whole chest
Hmm.
hurt. When you think about something that has hurt you, what
Hmm.
kind of feelings do you get, or what sensations come to you?
Well, let me. I think I feel a array of emotions when I think about something that's happened. You know, whether it's if I'm in a conversation and molestation comes up, and if the person who's sharing their experience, my mind goes back to what happened to me as a kid.
Mhm.
If I'm thinking about someone being let down or disappointed because they had high expectations for someone and that didn't pan out, and hearing that story brings up the disappointment that I've experienced in life and in pastoring people. I think it's important, though, to understand that this issue of being in an unforgiving state, or let's say choosing not to forgive, because that's what it is. I think a lot of times the mistake we make is that we allow our feelings to be dictators as opposed to what you're saying as indicators,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? My feeling tells me something is wrong, or my feeling tells me something is right.
Mhm.
But because I feel that it's wrong or I feel that it's right, I can't stop there because I need to deal with this from a mental perspective,
Mhm.
understanding, so that I can properly deal with my feelings. That's the crutch of, or not crutch, but that's the catalyst of emotional intelligence. And I tell people of faith who would say, well, that's emotional intelligence. I'm a Christian. No, you can't separate the two. Jesus taught this, allowing the truth you know to speak louder than the emotions you feel.
Mm. Yes.
That's emotional intelligence. That's allowing when emotions are high, logic is low. So merging, or rather the understanding, this is what I'm feeling, but now this is what I know. Let's take, for instance, someone who's lied to you
Mhm.
and that's hurt you. The trust is broken. Uh, if there's something as it relates to finance or something, that can be lost. Now I choose to forgive. What does that look like?
Yes.
I am not going to pay you back for what you've done to me. Meaning, I'm not going to badmouth you. I'm not going to destroy your character because of an episode I had with you. I could be justifiable in doing that, but I'm not going to do that because I choose to forgive. Now, that does not mean I put you right back where you were prior to the lie, because forgiveness, it's not only not forgetting, Doc, but here's an eye opener. Forgiveness is not instant restoration,
Yes.
right? Forgiveness opens the door for restoration to take place. Forgiveness opens the door for trust to be reestablished. But me choosing to not retaliate, me choosing not to seek revenge, me choosing not to treat you like you've treated me,
Mhm.
is me forgiving you. Now, sometimes the act that may have been done to me is beyond my hands as relates to the consequences. Somebody runs into your car. You can choose to forgive them and not run back into theirs. You can choose to forgive them and not try to damage who they are. But if they've ran into, it's an insurance policy, they're going to have to pay a high premium because that's out of my hands. You understand what I'm saying? It's almost like we can choose the sin or the disobedient, but we can't choose the consequence. So my forgiving you is me not controlling, is me not having, it's not me saying I'm forgiving you and you won't have any consequence.
Mhm.
It's saying I'm forgiving you, meaning I'm not going to bother you no more in a manner that I could. I'm going to choose not to retaliate or give revenge.
Oh, and just before we signed on, we were talking about if something happens that you feel is damage to you,
Mhm.
we have to remember that maybe it was all for the good, right?
Mhm.
That this happened to open the door for something better to happen to you. So,
Mhm.
when you were telling the story about Phileas, is that
Philemon.
Philena?
Mhm.
I thought about Joseph and his
Mhm.
brothers. They
Mhm.
thrown him into the well, and then
Mhm.
they had to come back at him when the famine
Mhm.
came, and he showed forgiveness.
That's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. He did not do to them what he had power to do. Now, when you talk about where the strength lies, it is much stronger not to retaliate than it is to commit an offense. Somebody does you wrong, they've done all they, a fella throws a swing at you, he's hit his shot.
Mm-hmm.
He's flexed his might. He's shown his power. He's done. Now, the person who he's fighting has now the power to retaliate. And oftentimes we're in situations, and I don't know, Dr. Van, if I would want to call this, we can play on the terminology. Some would call it karma. Uh, some would call it divine retribution. Some would call it you got what you deserve. But life has a way when you choose to forgive. I think you open the doors for justice to come.
Yes.
And I know that doesn't always seem like we get it, right? Those who have been unjust handled it. But I really believe that when we forgive, we open the doors for justice to come in ways that we may never know. Because, and I'm a man of faith, God does not have to show you how he deals with your enemies.
That's
And I,
between, yeah, that's between them. That's not we don't have to orchestrate that. Um,
that's exactly right. That's
um,
exactly right.
I was thinking of, I want us to get into how do we forgive. But viewers, if you've just dropped into our conversation, Bishop Clark and I are talking about forgiveness, and we talked about what it is not, uh,
Mm-hmm.
what the reason behind making the choice to forgive. And Bishop, I did a little homework. Let me see if I can bring it up.
All right.
Looking at the, let me just get that. Looking
All
at
right.
meaning, the Greek word for forgive
Uh-huh.
with is aphiemi,
Mm-hmm.
and it means to let go or release.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what you've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We need to, and it's not easy though, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not easy. So before we get into specifically some suggestions on how to forgive, can you talk about, well, I guess we're getting into it now, but can you talk about how to forgive the unforgivable, or what we believe to be an unforgivable act?
Okay. Well, let's first of all deal. Let me state this: that forgiveness is a choice that has to be made every time the feeling emerges. Right? We put these things as love and forgiveness and kindness as if they are permanent or perpetual practices that we do all the time. No, it's every situation and it's every day, right? I can have a trigger, as you say, of something that happened in the past and choose not to let that go, choose not to release the anger, and choose not to uh, um, or take matters in my own hand and go after that. Well, now here I am dealing with something that I chose not to let go at that moment. That may be different next week. right? It's not a destination. It's a journey you experience. Forgiveness, loving, all of that. Relationships are different. So when we talk about uh, how forgiveness starts or what it looks like, I think it's a perpetual practice we have. The other piece of that is the unforgivable sin. Now, the scriptures teach uh, that when the Holy Spirit who has come will testify of Christ, meaning he would share through men and women the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is a message of forgiveness. When Jesus speaks, there's a sin, unpardonable sin. He talks about rejecting the message of forgiveness. So here's what he's literally saying. If forgiveness is being offered and you choose to reject the forgiveness that's being offered, then there is no forgiveness. So the unforgivable sin that Jesus speaks of is the rejection of the message of the gospel that the Holy Spirit shares through the hearts and minds of believers, both through our witness as well as through our walk. Now, when we come down to personal sins that we think are unforgivable, I think it depends on the individual and how deep that hurt is. Here's what I say to that person who feels as though they're dealing with something that's unforgivable. Here's what can help you choose to forgive. That what they have done, what was said, and what you experienced has not stopped you. You are still alive. You survive. So forgiving does not dismiss the pain. It just makes it clear that the pain has not paralyzed you. If you're dealing with something now that you just seen is the most, and no one can denounce or belittle how you feel, it's real to you. But if you want to be free from that, choose to forgive for yourself. Because as long as you hold on to that unforgiveness, there's a part of you that is not, or let me say it this way, as long as you hold on to unforgiveness, you're not being the best version of you can be.
Yes. Yes. You know, that reminds me of a couple of things you said. And one is that it's a journey. So it's not one and done. So
Yes.
you have experienced a trauma, big or tiny. You have to go through the journey with each one. And one of the first steps that I think it's important to realize is that it's okay to get angry. Somebody hurt you, right?
Yes.
It's okay to feel that
Yes.
feel it. Rage.
Yes.
We're human, right?
Yes. Yes. I tell people all the time, feeling is not the sin.
That's right.
Feeling is not the wrong thing. A feeling is a feeling. It's how you respond after that feeling that's going to determine whether or not you're going to make things better for yourself or things bad. Paul says it this way. He says, be angry and sin not. What are you saying, Paul? Acknowledge a feeling. Just don't respond inappropriate to the feeling. But feelings come. And it's amazing because a lot of people of faith, we make the huge mistake because we believe that it's about feeling. We've lumped spirituality just into emotionalism. And my scriptures I read, the spirit I have is intelligent, intentional.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so this whole thing about healing, and it's so important because they're all woven together. You find somebody who's unforgiving, they're bitter, they're mean, and watch this. I've seen it carry over into other relationships.
Yes.
Right? Parents have to remember, as they're beefing as husband and wife, children, if there's animosity and malice in the air, children feel that in the atmosphere
And they breathe it in.
and they breathe it in. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it becomes part of how they navigate their life. I'm thinking about this time, and this book, Forgive and Forget by Smedes, is coming to my mind. And there was a time, and I'm going to be very general because I don't want to out any family members, because it's a family thing, okay? Yeah, but well, family and money and court. That's how it goes. But years ago, I wasn't the person who was harmed, but someone very close to me in the family was harmed. It's a young person. Their father passed away prematurely and left an inheritance for them so that they could finish school and buy a house and just benefit from his very hard work his whole life. And someone in the family was able to steal that inheritance. And so this case went on for almost 4 years. So it's back and forth to court. And although I didn't have to go, it was a young person and I wanted to support that person. And so, Bishop, after like the third visit to court, I mean, the anger is still in me. And so I found this book. It's called Forgive and Forget. And I would bring it and I'd sit and read it. I'd read it in court. And then I even gave it to the family member's attorney. So because I think he was kind of getting angry too, because it just kept going on and on and on. And I just believe that this anger has to happen. And I say, maybe it burns out, this trauma. And then we feel the hurt. So the anger passes. And then we feel that hurt we talked about earlier. Pain, tears. I can't tell you how many tears I have cried behind big trauma and little traumas. But these are phases, like you said, it's a journey. If we don't go through experiencing the pain, experiencing the anger, it's very difficult. I don't want to say impossible, because all things are possible. I believe that. But it's easier if you allow the anger to burn out, to allow yourself to feel the hurt so that you could get to healing. Because if you don't, then you're still carrying around that baggage of resentment and I'm going to get you, you got me, I'm going to get you. So earlier in our conversation, you brought up love in relationship to forgiveness. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So this is and I'm getting to a point where I'm growing, where I can disclose the point of a message before I preach it. Right. And it took a while for me, because I like to keep that like a comedian with a good joke. I can't tell you the punchline. But in that story of Philemon, there is love, there's forgiveness, and the one I'll deal with this week is accountability. Whenever you have been damaged, whether it's big or small, and that's relative, right? Because you can think something small to you, but it'd be huge to me. Those three things are important: love, forgiveness, accountability. All of them are choices. All of them have to be made with an understanding, and feelings from that understanding will flow. Feelings from the experience will flow. But if you understand those three principles, those three practices, then you'll be all right. Love is choosing to do right by and to do what's best for another with no strings attached. And sometimes when somebody in your family has hurt you, because sometimes, let me pause, Doc, and let's be honest, there are some people who have damaged us. Forgiving, moving on is easier because we ain't got to see them no more. All we got to deal with is a memory. And time and experiences and distance can make that memory less and less impactful. But when I got to see you, when I've got to keep coming in your presence because you're a part of my world, that can be very challenging. So what I want to do to this person, I want to establish if I'm going to choose to love them. And even love is a choice.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose to love you, do what's best for you. What's best for you? What's best for you is that I forgive you. And my forgiveness is I'm going to release the anger that I have towards you in a manner and a way that doesn't cause me to damage or destroy you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to demand you to give me something back that right? Sometimes we've got to forgive and there's no apology. So once I love, I can move to forgiveness. Now, here is where the challenge comes, because after I've shown you love, after I forgive, now there has to be accountability. Because how you handle accountability will determine where I move on with you in this relationship, or if this relationship continues to develop and grow, or is this one that we have to cut our ties? You go your way and I go mine, because now accountability comes into play. And here's what I've discovered from that episode of Paul's between Philemon and Onesimus, that the person who's not willing to be held accountable is a person who you forgive, but that person is not remorseful.
Mm. But that's okay, right? Because
That's
they're
fine.
not, they're not in control of our forgiving. We're in control.
We're in control. But what it does now, and I think this is where a lot of people make the mistake, and it damages them for other experiences to choose not to forgive, because it all now looks like hogwash. When I love and forgive does not mean that person changes. It just means I won't. So now accountability allows me to see who I'm really dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when you understand people, you can deal with them better.
And I'll share this. And I'm a really sensitive person, so these little tiny traumas I have to deal with them every day. But one of the things I do in order to deal with them every day is when I do my devotion and get on my knees every night, these are the words I say. Lord, I ask that I forgive. Isn't something I'm having trouble because I'm not on my knees? Isn't it? Maybe I need to get on my knees, but it goes something like this, that anyone who I've hurt, I ask that they forgive me, and anyone who's hurt me, I forgive them. And this is every single night, because you may not be consciously aware that something has hurt you. Not right in the present moment, but then you lay down, you think about what happened during the day, and that kind of hit my heart the wrong way. So that's why the current and past, and sometimes I even call the person's names. God, I forgive so and so, and I am specific. I forgive so and so for doing X, Y, and Z. And as you know, Bishop, there's been some big trauma lately, and you asked me, you said, how are you going to deal with this person going forward? And I said, I'm going to deal with them the same way that I always have, but I'll never trust them again. So I'm going to be kind. and it has to be genuine because my face tells the whole story. So in
Mm-hmm.
my heart, I have to forgive them.
Mm-hmm.
I draw the line when it comes to business. Oh, I won't do business with them again. And I don't.
And that's the adjustment.
Yeah.
That's the adjustment that we have to make. And I'm so glad that you shared that experience, because a lot of people are held to this belief that if I forgive you, we go back to where we were prior to the act. No, we do not. The relationship has changed.
Mhm.
There's so many passages of scripture that comes to mind to prove that point. Once there has been a breach in a relationship, there's a breach, and it may take time to restore that. It may take time to reconcile that. If that is something that needs to happen. I was talking to a preacher just before, well, yesterday, I was talking to a preacher, and today I was talking to a saint, and the situations were similar, but the answer was the same. And that is sometimes it's the end. There is no comma.
Mm-hmm.
This happened. I forgive. I move on. You move on. You know, Paul says something interesting in his letter to the church at Rome, around chapter 12. He says, as much as in you lies, live peaceably with all men.
Mm-hmm.
Translation is simple. Do what you can to live well with people. After you've done that, and there's you can't live well with them, then let them go on their way
Mm-hmm.
and you on yours.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think we've tried to force things to happen that just wasn't never supposed to be, right? And then there's sometimes things that could have been, but because there has been a breach or a betrayal or
Mm-hmm.
breach of contract in the covenant, things change. You know,
Yeah.
that how many friends, those of you all who are watching, ask yourself this: how many people you met in your life early as a teen, maybe in your early 20s, and you vowed that y'all would be friends forever,
Mm-hmm.
that nothing would change no matter what? I got some friends like that. Man, you couldn't tell me and my boys would hang out, and life moves on. It's not something bad happened. It just time changes things. Well, I think that's true not only just in distance, but I think that that happens in disciplines too, as it relates to the dynamic of relationships.
And you bring up a very good point. There may be the distance, but don't hold on to the resentment. You know,
That's exactly right.
just watch. You know, you may not be communicating with the person or seeing the person ever, but when it's family, you got to work overtime
There
to.
ain't no doubt about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we don't want to divorce family, and so
Hmm.
what I do. I just send, anytime a thought comes up about
Hmm.
the situation, whatever it might be, I
Hmm.
just have learned to say, I send blessings to that person right
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
changes my whole energy because
Hmm.
if I focused on what the situation was that caused the need for forgiveness, I get angry all over again. I start
Hmm.
hurting, and that you don't want to be in that cycle.
Hmm.
You want to be, you want to have peace. You want, and Bishop, you said this so many times. You still, if you're not forgiving, you're still sitting in the anger and the pain and
Yeah.
ruminating, and that person's gone on with their life. They may not even remember.
So you got to forgive them for you.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
that is wonderful. Well, Bishop, you and I could talk all day. We could go on to
Wow.
uh,
Boy, time go by
yeah,
fast. It's that
that's it.
time.
That's it.
Oh
But
wow.
I I know you have my book. I think you know my book better than I know my book. But viewers, as you know, my book is Regalia Healing, and it's really the core or the foundation of this how the show started 3 years ago. But I want to read as we close. I want to read um, the poem I wrote on forgiving, and then I'm going to ask you, viewers, after the show ends just spend a minute or two thinking about what you need
Mhm.
or who you need to forgive. And start with yourself, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So if you have the book, it starts on page 190,
Mhm.
and it's titled Forgiving. I'm forgiving my mom for the beatings. I'm
Mhm.
forgiving my dad for the scheming.
Mhm.
I'm forgiving my sister for believing misrepresentations. I'm forgiving associates for jealousy and violations. I'm forgiving past love interests for selfish games. I'm forgiving all who attempted to befriend me for fame. I'm forgiving myself for decades of allowing fear to isolate me and
Mhm.
live austere. I'm forgiving my lack of self love and self care. I'm forgiving myself for my lack of vulnerability. I'm forgiving myself for avoiding transparency. I'm loving myself for entering a space in which I could see my face. It was Caritas that led me on a path of healing and gave me the courage to start feeling. I start living from my heart, and it gave me a new start. I'm ecstatic and celebrate my transformation. Self-acceptance, self-love, self-care, self-respect, self-worth, self-compassion. I'm happy. I'm at peace. I'm at ease. I'm my best friend. I've let it out. I've told my story, and I give God all the glory. So, you see, I had a lot to
Mhm.
give,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
this is one of the last poems in the book. And I just feel that just letting that all out, verbalizing it, writing it. And so I
Mhm.
say, viewers, think about it, maybe write it. You can write it in a way that no one will ever have to read it, but get it out, process it. And I just wanted to share my journey. And so, Bishop, as we're closing this episode, what does your heart want to share with our viewers right now?
Remember, we're always responsible to manage how we feel. It's likened unto someone checking into a hotel room. You cannot control a person walking into the lobby, but you can control whether or not they're able to check in a room.
Mhm.
When somebody has hurt you, that feeling is real, but you owe it to yourself to deal properly with it. And forgiving is how you start.
Mhm. Bishop, thank you for just your wisdom, the love you have for us, and just taking us through this journey and making forgiveness accessible.
Bless you, Doc. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Always a delight. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you. Okay, so we've been on this path of forgiveness, and I just encourage you to just think about forgiving yourself, forgiving others, and just start the journey right after you end watching this. Just one thing you can just start with, okay? So I ask that you join me every first and third Sunday right here on blackdoctor.org for more discussions and experiences around healing. Until then, I wish you love and I wish you light. And I'm going to share some resources for you if you want to get my book, which is a tool to help healing. Okay, thank you.